Well, Kurt, you brought the quadcopter back with 4 rotor blades.
And I didn't have to use any of the replacements.
No, you didn't.
The kit does come with some extra rotor blades and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's kind of neat. I noticed that when it was.
I'm not really
nice
sure how
feature.
hard you'd have to hit that thing to break those. I'm sure it happens, but
Yeah. It would probably be one of those where you're up in the air a ways and hit something
bring
and
it
it comes
down,
tumbling down. Yeah.
Because we put it through standard
Hey, it went through
test
me.
procedures, and Rob even flew it too.
Yeah. Of course, I was in a padded room where I normally stay.
Rob quickly realized that quadcopters fly like regular helicopters in terms of tail rotor control or rudder, as it may be. It's not a coaxial, is it, Rob?
No, it's not a
not a
coaxial.
coaxial.
And I didn't figure it would be, but you know, I was surprised.
It wasn't too bad.
Well, hey, let's jump into
no
some.
one was injured in your testing procedures. So.
Let's jump into some review specs here, shall we?
That's
Starting with model characteristics, build as advertised, 5 out of 5. As mentioned before, there's nothing to build.
it's ready to go, and we didn't have any
Bada
adjustments
bing,
to do
bada boom.
or anything like that, so it gets full points on that.
Finish, 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah, it has kind of a neat airframe design. You see this is a little different. They kind of go, a lot of the quads go with like the machine look. It's like some sort of
or
alien.
butter dish on 4.
Butter dish on 4. Yeah, we've seen butter dishes
That's it.
on the homegrown ones.
Yeah.
You know, this actually has a little bit of styling put into it. You've got like a little pod racer type design. So I mean, it looks attractive. But other than that, it's carbon fiber frame, and you know, it's a very good looking little tiny quad.
All right. Power, 4.5 out of 5. Explain.
Yeah, explain. It has plenty of takeoff power at all. In fact, what you'll notice too is when you throttle down and you descend, it doesn't take anything to blip it back up in the air.
Yeah.
And where you really notice that power come in too, you do get a lot of drop when you do your flip maneuvers, the auto flip mode, when it either does an auto roll or an auto loop. You lose quite a bit of altitude.
Yeah.
It really, you know, it can chew up 6-8 feet pretty quickly. So you don't want to do that at desk level or, you know, tabletop height and try to flip the thing. It's gonna, you won't be happy. Maybe that's why they include the extra rotors. So
You know, it could
auto
be.
flips 2 feet off of a hard surface. But you know, it has enough power to be able to fly its forward flight and do standard maneuvers just fine all day. So you know, I think it's more than ample.
Cool. Ground handling, 4 out of 5.
Yeah, you'll notice, and you saw in the video too, a little bit of oscillation at takeoff, especially after a full charge in the battery. It just wants to get up there, and it does a little bit of oscillation. But then as soon as you get out of that ground effect, it cleans out. You know, it's a tricky thing, and we can talk about those flight characteristics. But you've got a lot going on. You've got a very small airframe. You've got 4 rotors that you can't fight each other too much. So the gyro has to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
These stabilization gyros are working constantly. So you're going to be at the higher end of the gain settings.
Sure.
You've got to be pretty quick and responsive. If you're slow in response to something so tiny with so little mass, it's going to be all over the place. So we did notice that oscillation on takeoff, but then it goes away immediately. No strange characteristics once you're flying.
Durability, 4 out of 5.
Yes, overall it's tough. Now the only thing that would be less than absolutely stellar is the body mounts themselves. It actually has 2 little pods or 2 little posts that stick up to mount the body.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a very flexible composite to use for the body, and the posts themselves are very tough. So we didn't have any problems at all, even after our our tosses and tumbles. But the fact that it isn't just a passive clip over the carbon fiber spars means that you've got 2 points of pressure contact. So you know, again, we had no problems at all. But from a durability perspective, those 2 points of pressure may be problematic, but overall, again, it's very tough. There's not a whole lot of mass there. It's a typical micro as far as, or nano micro as far as you usually do more damage with your hands than you do with its own inertia or mass. So.
All right, pilot experience, flight as advertised, 4.5 out of 5.
Okay, now when we get to what it's really all about, and that's the flying of the Ethos, you've got to realize these smaller, these micros, typically what the manufacturer does is it limits the degree of angle that you can actually accomplish. So if you work with a wide open quad, you can pretty much just keep taking it forward, and it's going to go crazy on your whatever direction input it's going to take off and go. With these micros and nano micros and the smaller ones, we've noticed that they have the limitation of stabilization gyro. So when you throw, full right stick, it's going to bank. It's going to find its banking degree. I haven't measured it. Maybe it's 25 or 25 degrees roughly, and that's the most it's going to allow it to do.
Yeah.
So even though you're holding that stick over, it's not going to continue going where it kills all thrust on the right motors and just drives the left ones over. It finds that, fixes it, and that's the most it's going to let you do. Yeah. And so when you do like hard control inputs, it'll catch that angle and then catch that angle, but you'll see that very specific angle show up that the gyro's reading.
Yeah.
The problem you run into a lot of times is when you have that fixed, and we've experienced with other models, is when you have that fixed pitch angle off the gyro, you're still not discounting the fact that you're increasing forward airspeed. As you do, you're cutting lift across the thrust across the bottom of the props because you've got air now instead of most of it going down through the propeller. It's getting forced on the side of the propeller, so you're now cutting lift.
Yeah.
So what happens is that it speeds up and it gets screaming, it starts losing altitude, and your only correction at that point is to pull back in the opposite direction. But that, again, requires, all that does is it reduces the speed on the trailing motors and runs the forward ones up to max. Well, if you already got the throttle maxed out, all you're doing is cutting the back ones.
Yeah.
And if you're already going down at this angle, it's a runaway. And all of a sudden this thing they just take off and they go. We did not have that problem with the Ethos. It was surprising. It did a very, very good job of working with solid recovery within that fixed degree or fixed angle of the gyro. So it performed extremely well. Stability is as expected on on rotations, on pirouettes, or rotation about the yaw axis. The overall handling was good. It was very controllable. It was very stable. The trims on the transmitter kept things nice and level, and once you got it locked in, it really held its ground. So overall flight performance is very good, but when you look at these little micros, you want to kind of focus on that one characteristic, and that is, does it have a tendency to run away?
Yeah.
In that, for people who want to do more aerobatic things with them and get a little more aggressive, they may not like that. They may want to be able to be more twitchy and more agile. But if you look at the overall well-roundedness of its flight performance, but also its inherent stability, it did a great job on both fronts. So I was very pleased with, and in fact, we had the opportunity to review a few at the same time. We reviewed the Ethos. So it was great to do that, in our own minds, head-to-head comparison of, we just flew that one, now what does this one feel like? And the Ethos stood out as far as its lack of tendency to have that runaway.
Yeah.
So.
All right, well, flight time, 5 out of 5.
300 milliamp battery. You get some fantastic run times with this. I mean, it really depends on how much you're into the throttle.
Yep.
It depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a lot of consistent hovers, if you're doing takeoffs and landings and stuff like that, you're going to vary that flight time. But you'll get a very comfortable, 8+ minutes out of this for flight time.
Good.
So,
field size, obviously small areas required to fly it in.
You could fly it on this table if you wanted to. Yeah. Quads, they can be pretty decent performers. They can get away from you pretty quick. And I think you realized that the first time you flew one, it's like, oh, this thing will actually take off. It's going to go somewhere.
You always have to refer to me.
Well, that's the barometer. There's the rotating lift surface barometer that is Rob. If it's
the helicopter idiot.
If he gets it and flies it and is like, man, I did pretty well with that, that's a beginner.
That's a beginner.
If Rob gets it and says, oh, I don't know, that's an
Even
intermediate.
if I grab it,
he gets it and goes, holy crap, that's an advanced.
It's still a beginner. Are you kidding me? It's still a beginner. You didn't.
It's just
Yeah. All right, moving on. Portability, 5 out of 5.
It comes in a box with a carry handle and plastic or blown molded.
Carry handle equals 5.
Carry handle equals 5. You drop it right in the container and take off.
Yep. It could be nothing beyond that carrying handle, but if it's got one, it's a
carry
5.
handle in a bag, it's a 5.
That's right. And now if they ever step up to a backpack,
it's 5.
We have to change our settings.
6.5.
Skill level, beginner. Yeah. Based on me, it's a beginner.
Another thing you're going to notice too on the radio that we noticed between some of the other manufacturers is there's a little larger deadband space, and you experience that right away. Deadband's not a bad thing when you're a beginner. Deadband just means that you can move the stick a little bit in each direction and it's not going to respond. Once you get going a little further, then it's going to start taking those control inputs.
Expos.
Kind of, yeah, but there's no linear, there's no gradual roll off at all. Whereas an expo is exponentially increased control. This is I'm dead. Okay, I'm doing something. So, but it does. Right. It feels like an expo.
Built-in pseudo expo.
Pseudo expo. That helps a lot, and in fact, it made the Ethos, because the gyro does a great job of keeping it stable. It made it feel that much more stable when we started control inputs. But then on top of that, in the air with that deadband, we didn't have a twitchiness, an inherent twitchiness of over-controlling the quadcopter. So that deadband does help. It does support dual rates. Add to that the thing we talked about with the tendency not to have runaway on forward flight or on aggressive maneuvers. All of that equals a fantastic beginner platform.
Yeah.
It's a great beginner quad. Now, throw it on high rates, and you throw on the auto flip feature and things like that. And it'll keep a beginner pilot happy up to probably the point where they're going to want to move into a bigger quad and do some more exotic things with it. But it's a very, very beginner friendly, and it's hobby quality. We talked about this time and time again. This is a hobby grade product. This isn't something sitting at a mall kiosk that you can never find parts for. That you can. This is a U.S. manufacturer that is available. It's accountable, and you know the product itself is available only through Hobbytown USA stores, but there are tons of those all over the country. So. That's always nice. It's a nice feature, and again, it makes it more beginner friendly because it's not just the experience; it's also the consumer experience.
Exactly.
And you don't want to be disappointed by having an end-of-life product that you're going to crash. It's the nature of the beast. If you aren't flying, you aren't crashing, as they say. Things will probably break or will break at some point. You're going to want to be able to get spare parts and keep it up in the air. So,
all right.
Yeah, good experience overall. That wraps up our review of the Ethos QX75. You can go to our website at tobefly.com to see the full review. For our mobile users, you can go to rcflightsource.com, download the mobile app, and take our content with you on the go. I'm Kurt with Two Brothers Hobby.
And I'm Rob. Thanks for watching.